Just delighted to be here today with two people who I've gotten to know who really represent some of the best about leadership and about companies making a positive difference in the world. So delighted to have Jen Crozier from IBM, 20 years at IBM, right? Started at the age of two. And has had a huge impact. And this group really represents two different perspectives as we think about leadership and businesses' roles. Jen just promoted to the head, and she has a title which goes on for several pages, but and all the details are in your books, but the Vice President of Corporate Citizenship and Corporate Affairs, and the President of the IBM International Foundation, Jen Crozier, who really can give us a great perspective on IBM and the transformation the company is going through.
Thanks, Daryl.
And then Rick Kash, a Chicago native, come on, a graduate of DePaul University, who let's go, DePaul, it's right down the block, who this Sunday will be giving the commencement speech, and thereafter will be known as Dr. Kash.
Thank you.
So Rick, we're delighted. Rick is was the founder of Cambridge Consultants, a great consulting firm that I worked with. He was the CEO and chairman. They were acquired by Nielsen. Nielsen, who knows everything you watch and everything you buy. All right, so be careful. Rick has the data, and Rick is the vice chair. He's sort of in the process of retiring. He has cut his hours back from, 80, 85 a week to
about
65. So he's still very, very engaged. We have one person kind of on the way up. Another person, Rick, like myself, kind of on the way out, but can give us some good perspectives about what's happened in the world of leadership. To start with, today, anybody feeling that we're in a time of change in the world? All right, okay. So I'm going to ask, we've done this for hundreds of CEOs now, is ask people to have two words to start off with about how they are personally feeling in the current socio-political environment. So, Rick, you want to kick us off? Your two words.
2 words.
You're done.
So, how do you feel is an interesting premise. Maya Angelou once said that people won't remember what you say, they may not remember what you do, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. And so I think that today people are feeling, pursuant to your question, are really feeling what's going on as much as they're thinking about it. And perhaps the fact that the thinking is secondary to the feeling is what's caused this these remarkable conflicts here and all across the world.
So the 2 words?
I think thinking and feeling.
Thinking and feeling. Mm-hmm. Okay, thinking and feeling. Jen?
So I'm going to go with energized and collaborative, because I think that this is a time where perhaps as a private sector, we didn't feel like we had to take the lead maybe as much, and now it's very clear that we do. And so we're very energized to get out there and take the lead on a lot of social issues, and we're very collaborative and aware that at a global level, we need to be partnering with each other, with NGOs, with government at all different levels, and very focused on that.
Right. Both of these exceeding the expectations here, going well beyond the 2 words, but I think some important aspects. Now, key to that, and we're hearing that more as we've done these 2 words, early on, different people had different views, people vote in different ways, had different perspectives, but we are seeing a lot of energy, a lot of people saying, hey, it's time to step up, take a lead on some of these key issues. And as we talk about next generation leadership, love to get your perspectives. Rick, you probably have worked with more CEOs, including myself, and provided counsel, advice, some of it good, some of it. But what have you learned? I mean, what really makes the great leaders that you have seen really can make a difference as we look forward?
So most great leaders are very thoughtful. I believe that this generation, as opposed to simply leading with the balance sheet and the P&L, they're leading much more, or if you will, to a larger extent, with how they feel. Even if inherently they don't believe in the issues that you all are leading, they're driven by the demand of their 2 most important constituencies, their employees and their customers. And as a consequence, you don't have to get anybody to sign a pledge around social innovation because it's in their best interest. That's right. And so I think it's less about the blood test, about how much do you truly believe, but rather how much are you cognizant of what's going on And are you participatory? I think the other thing is the next step up is where you really deeply and viscerally feel this is a commitment and it's a way in which you define your life, your role, and your leadership. And I think the combination of those two are what's driving, indeed, the next generation of leadership.
Great, great. Jen, thoughts? As you talk with folks at IBM, and you're creating great leaders there among your 100,000 plus employees, what are you seeing as the leaders of today?
Well, one, we're building a lot of leaders, and I think it's really important that leadership not be seen as something that some people do, but that we're really building leadership skills across the board for a very large swath of people. And then when we think about what that leadership entails, a few themes that come up are about global and about service. So one of the things that we do at IBM is to have a program we call the Corporate Service Corps, where we invite the future leaders of our company to come and apply to spend 4 weeks in a developing country working on a social issue. And so if you apply, and we're actually in the application period right now, we have thousands of IBMers, less than 11% will get accepted. It's a hugely competitive program. They'd say, hey, congratulations, you're gonna go to Tanzania for 4 weeks to work on an environmental issue, full pay and benefits. And along the way, you're gonna meet other IBMers, you're gonna pick up skills, you're gonna learn global and cultural things. Now, what have we gotten from this? What we've gotten from this are an incredible set of skills, a boost in employee engagement, and an ethos of service and of global collaboration that then comes back as they return and are promoted throughout the leadership system. And so I think that's really integral to the next generation of leadership.
And from an IBM perspective, not only is it doing good, but it's developing your next generation of leaders, and I imagine maybe even some new business practice ideas that could come out of that.
Absolutely. We get tremendous market research from this as well.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So you talk about the power of service, and just, Rick, you also have a big commencement speech coming up, and you're going to kind of maybe hit on that whole idea of service and this notion of giving back and the power that can have.
So in preparation, I read what are said to be the 250 best commencement addresses, no one of which other than Stephen Jobs and a couple of others were really motivating. And so I wanted to get to differentiate. And so what I stumbled upon, I wish I'd like to have told you that it was an insight brought by the clash of thunder and lightning, but indeed, what I've really gotten to is the role of generosity in leadership. Generosity writ large. It's generosity about be candid with me, spend time with me, be open with me, train me, be fair with me. And so there's a list of 20. Turns out that quantitatively, in the book Good to Great, the best business seller of all time, the #1 trait of the leaders whom Collins said are great is generosity. Warren Buffett says it's one of the 2 most important traits he looks for in leaders. If you're not generous, you're not an effective leader.
Very good. Great thoughts, great comments as we look at that. Last we're going to hear, I think, from Carly Fiorina is going to be speaking here later over the next couple of days. And we had Carly 2 weeks ago at our CECP summit with corporate groups. And Carly spoke one day. Of course, she was the first woman Fortune 50 CEO, also a Republican candidate for president. And then we have David Seamus. Anybody know David Seamus, the name? So a few. David Seamus is going to run and lead the Obama Foundation right here in Chicago. And he was in the White House on political, leading some of the efforts there. And both had a very similar, differently delivered, but same message, which was the importance of leadership, the importance of being able to give back. And while it came from 2 sides of the political aisle, very powerful that people are really looking at that. And both the new Obama organization and Carly really going to devote and focus their lives on how do they use this for the nonprofit, the social sector, and community. So powerful thoughts and ideas. Let's switch over to the corporate side of things. And research at Nielsen shows that this matters, this notion of companies being socially responsible. And then we'll look to Jen and some great examples that IBM was up to. Rick, anything you can share on that for the broader audience?
In 15, going to be updated in not too long, the importance, if you will, the absolute mandatory nature of sustainability was studied by Nielsen across the world. Limited to consumer products companies, but separately we've looked at the non-consumer products companies. There's been a secular change The change has been that it's no longer something that customers will tell you, yes, if you do that, I'm going to be one of your most profitable and loyal customers. Yeah. And then they would proceed not to do anything to, in fact, realize what it was that they had said. The secular change is that today, demand in most industries by both employees and customers, but most importantly customers for that question, are enabling companies and individuals to make decisions predicated on sustainability and broad social issues. To the extent that in consumer products, where we have the precise data, for 3 years running, where growth was relatively slow across the sector, brands that had amongst their 3 most important identifiers by customers, consumers, they grew double digits 2 consecutive years, which is about 500% more than the total industry. So the demand is there, and it's now being pulled instead of just push.
Fascinating. So brands, businesses that are seen as being more sustainable,
yep,
are not only people feel good about it, but they're putting their money down. They're growing faster.
And a related, somewhat tangential, but related point is that smaller brands for the past 3 years have grown faster, despite having many fewer resources. In large measure, it's because it becomes core to their ethos and their identity, where if you're a giant corporation, there's so many other things that you're known for, it's hard to make that creep into the totality of what you think, feel, and believe about giant companies and giant brands.
Fascinating, fascinating. Now, a giant company would be IBM,
giant
right?
Company.
And this is more of a B2C, business to consumer side, but you're seeing the same thing from a B2B perspective, and some great examples at IBM.
There's absolutely, it is a requirement that we be not only sustainable, but that we be actively making a positive social impact. The world is very concerned about the future of artificial intelligence. It's our job to think about what that means for the future. In January at the World Economic Forum, we issued a set of principles about the ethics of artificial intelligence, and that's been something that's really resonated with all of our stakeholders, employees, clients, investors, and the like, and I think is really core. So one is guarding and really thinking about the ethics of the products and services that we bring to bear in the world. But another piece is then, millennials are out there. We are competing for the hearts and minds of millennial talent, no doubt about it. And they will make a social impact, period. They can do it with us or without us. And so our value proposition as an employer then becomes, in addition to your typical compensation, benefits, why you want to work there, is that piece of purpose. And importantly, what can we do to amplify the impact that you, the individual employee, can make in the world? So is it that you use our global scale? Is it financial resources? Is it social networks? Is it technology? And so I think part of our job, certainly at IBM and across the board with companies, is to think about what is that suite of assets that we have that helps to amplify things for employees.
That's great. Can you share 1 or 2 examples, maybe in the education or health space, of some of the really cool things that IBM is doing?
Sure, I will, and I attribute to Chicago because I've been at events for both of these here. So last night I was at the Sarah E. Good School graduation. So Sarah E. Good is one of a series of P-TECH schools. P-TECH school is a model IBM created to help with the college completion rate in the United States. Many of you probably know that the graduation rate for community colleges in this country is less than 30%, in some places as low as 7%. So we tackled that issue to say, what if we tied together high school with an associate's degree? Had a grade 9 through 14 school, and we partnered with Mike Bloomberg on this initially in New York and the City University of New York. We create curriculum that's geared toward what companies will actually be hiring for in 6 years. We make sure that every student has a mentor. We make sure they get workplace experiences, internships, and at the end of 6 years, IBM committed to be the first in line to hire them. So that started in Brooklyn 6 years ago. Of course, Rahm Emanuel heard that Bloomberg had one, said, I'll take 5 in Chicago. So off we went to Chicago. And then Cuomo said, we'll do more in New York. And then President Obama flew to Brooklyn to give his education speech there and gave $100 million in grants to make this model spread. But here's the interesting thing about this. This isn't just one side of the political aisle. A couple months ago, President Trump invited our CEO, Ginny Rometty, and 2 P-TECH graduates to the Oval Office to meet with Angela Merkel, because he also believes that connecting industry skills with education is the future to our workforce, solving our skills crisis and our workforce crisis. Now, I don't know any other issue in this country that those 2 sides agree on, but we're all really clear that there's a skills crisis and it needs to be solved. So we're really proud to be engaged in that.
Great stuff that IBM is. That's good stuff. Because it is an example, almost to the earlier point, of in a world right now with all the challenges that we see, how business can step up. And instead of just looking at the education system, say you guys aren't preparing the right people, well, step up and do something. This is what leaders do, fill those vacuums to really make an impact and a difference. Now you all, and we have a few minutes as we go here, are also doing some really neat things in the world of cancer. And we'll just kind of switch topics and just apply it to, how many people here have been affected by cancer in their family or friend? Okay, virtually everybody here at some point. And certainly one of the great challenges that we have today in society, not only in established geographies, but emerging economies as well. And you all are doing some really interesting things in these space. Jen, you want to share some of what IBM is up to in the cancer space and how it's really making an impact?
Sure. So commercially, we launched Watson Health a few years ago. We're teaching sent Watson to medical school. So Watson has studied with Memorial Sloan Kettering, Cleveland Clinic, and other hospitals to learn all about genomics, clinical trial matching, oncological diagnostics, and the like. And that is something that we're doing commercially. But in Citizenship, we think about those technologies and those assets shouldn't just go to the people who can pay for them. And how do we make sure that the 1 billion people on this planet who will never see a doctor in their lifetime are not forgotten? And so as we went and talked to World Health Organization, American Cancer Society, and said, what's the acupressure point? What's the one place we can press that'll make a big difference? And they said, you could pour money into screenings and physician training, but ultimately if there aren't medicines on the shelves, it doesn't really matter. People can't be treated. So in sub-Saharan Africa, there is a huge secondary corrupt market, people selling sugar water masked as chemotherapy. And less than 10% of people will get any kind of medication, including pain. So we've partnered with ACS on doing something that is kind of boring. It's supply chain and figuring out predictive analytics for 6 different health ministries of what medications they need. But that boring thing has the potential to help them get better volumes, better quality, and importantly, better prices of life-saving medications to people who never had a chance of getting them before.
That's right. And there's often these boring things that make such an impact. Yeah. These are the things. Rick, you're also doing some really, not that you're boring, but you're really doing some fascinating things now with on the cancer side as well from a research perspective. Share some of those with the group.
So would you rather talk about whether or not I'm boring?
We'll let the audience decide.
I've heard this research.
I think not boring.
This research is not boring.
This is really exciting.
Yeah. We're going to have a vote before you all leave. You'll see it on your phones. And then my wife will come and collect the votes. So it's been my great fortune to found 2 cancer research companies in partnership with Harvard University. And I'm thrilled to tell you that both are in human trials, and one may be a breakthrough in immunological approach. It's quite extraordinary, quite extraordinary. I think the best way to respond to your question is that, and it's germane to what you all are involved in. When I founded the first of the 2 companies, I was hopeful, and it was because of a loss that was close to me. I was hopeful that a group of friends of mine would provide perhaps as much as $50,000 each. We'd have a start. It dawned on me one day that if we turned this around and instead of making this a charitable donation, if we made it a for-profit. And so turned out there were a few other people around the country doing this 20 years ago. And there's now this burgeoning field called venture funding. So that what we did today, there's not an investor in our company who has less than $2.5 million in it. My sites had been 50,000, end of story. And the premise is that venture funding enables the people who put money in to own some or a majority of the intellectual capital. One relatively esoteric disease, which had a budget in their association of $5 million, invested in one new science, and today on their balance sheet, they have $3.2 billion because of the profitability of drugs. That's a separate topic. But the whole idea of venture funding, which is exploding in a positive way, the way in which people and now corporations are investing, is, I'm so excited about that. I'm going to give you vastly more money than you thought, but in return for which, I want to do this for profit. It's expanding the field of who and why people invest in the disease of cancer beyond anything we ever dreamed possible.
That's great. That's great. Great stuff. Great stuff. We could go on. I think we could go on all morning here, and but do really want to thank Jen and Rick for their perspective, for their leadership. It's about leadership. It's about that generosity and giving back. It's about really making impact. And I hadn't given up my 2 words to start with, but let me finish with thank you. Thank you all. Take care.